about earlier in the programme. Let's move on now. When European nations are marking 80 years since the end of World War II on the continent. Ceremonies in Germany and across Europe honour millions lost in the deadliest war in history. Leaders are calling for peace and unity amid today's global tensions. In Asia, Russia's State Duma Speaker Vyacheslav Volodin has arrived in Pyongyang. He will join North Korean officials for events marking 80 years since the end of Japanese colonial rule. Crowds waved Russian and North Korean flags as he was greeted by senior leader Cho Ryong-hae. In Japan, anger over the US military presence is growing in Okinawa. Residents hold near-daily protests against base construction in Henoko. These cite decades of crimes and incidents involving US soldiers, including reported sexual assaults. Survivors of wartime trauma say the military presence has never left since 1945. Women's groups demand urgent action as the world marks 8 decades since the Pacific War's end. In Okinawa, residents share personal stories of loss and opposition to the US military presence. Let's listen to what they had to say.
沖縄戦っていうやっぱり体験がやっぱりまず大きいと思います。で、僕らもやっぱりこの沖縄戦で4名に1人が亡くなったっていうことがあってね、僕のおじいちゃんとかおじさんもやっぱ亡くなってるわけですよ。で、だからそういうもう沖縄戦っていうのがあって、でこれがしかしながらなんていうかな、こう戦争終わったんだけど、しかしながら米軍そのまま居残ってずっと今まで来てるわけですよ、80年間。
私がですね、ちょうど復帰前高校3年生の時にですね海兵隊による強盗殺人事件っていう形になって今逮捕されて刑務所入ったんですけどね、その時に強盗の目的は殺すつもりはなかったかもしれないけど、ブロックで頭割って逃げてるんですよ。で奪ったお金が10ドル。
性暴力に限らずにいろんな事件が沖縄で起きてるんですよ。この交通事故だったり住居侵入だったり、いろんな事件をこう引っ張っていくと辿っていくと結局みんな米軍人の犯罪っていうのになっていって、じゃあやっぱり基地はいらないんじゃないということになっていくわけですね。だからアメリカ人が嫌いってわけではないですよ。
Well, joining us to discuss a host of topics there, Dr. Satoru Nagao, a fellow at the Hudson Institute, who joins us live from Tokyo, Japan. Dr. Nagao, as always, a pleasure to have you on the programme. Thank you for your time. Let's first look at the fact that this is the 80th anniversary since the end of the Second World War, this coming in a time where geopolitical tensions feel as if they're at an all-time high. Of course, so much concern over growing conflicts and the impact of nuclear weapons, of course, something which was pivotal in ending the Second World War, but also such a dark day for so many and the future of combat. What's your first reaction to these memorial services, of course, in the face of that instability?
So, should I say something?
Yes, please, Dr. Nagao.
Okay. Firstly, I need to say that there is a crime of the U.S. Army, that is true. But at the same time, I need to emphasize the crime rate of the U.S. military force in Japan is not high. It's not high. So that is a very important part. So overemphasis of the crime of the U.S. military forces is because it is useful. Why? Who commit this is simply China. Because this is very useful. World War II, China and the United States are same side against Japan. That's why under the current escalation of the US-China rivalry, China want to send a message to the US, you are the friend. And Japan is the real enemy. Secondly, because of Japan, China can legitimize their rapid military modernization. That's why they overemphasize Japan's threat. Look at this, World War II, Japan was empire, Japan was brutal, That's why China needs a strong military. And in this case, they want to divide China. China want to divide the U.S. and Japan. So that's why currently in Okinawa, anti-U.S. movement activists came from other places and
Yes.
funded by China. So that's why this is quite political.
Yes, of course,
Yes,
Dr.
that
Nagao,
is true. The
sorry
crime
to
is
interject.
exist.
Dr. Nagao, thank you ever so much for that insight on that topic. I do want to pivot back, just because of timings, onto these World War II ending memorial days. Thank you again for that insight. It does provide a unique perception on what we were talking about. But let's bring it back to these 80th anniversary celebrations and commemorations at the end of the Second World War. How significant is this in the face of course, continuing tensions?
Yes, 80th anniversary, I have already mentioned about the reason. For China, this is very important. United States is a former friend of China, so that's why China want to send a message, you are friends. And China want to divide the US and Japan, because if the US-Japan alliance is an enemy of China, China faces a bigger threat. But if the if the US is US, Japan is Japan, in this case, China can expand their territory. So that's why, for China, emphasis of the World War II is very important event to survive in the next decade. So that's why this is important. And they try to support anti-US movement in Okinawa. Why? Why? Because this is useful to divide US and Japan.
Yes.
And in this case, very important fact we need to remember. In China, China recently holds some conferences. Okinawa was part of China. So not only the Senkaku Island, China is preparing to expand their territory claim to Okinawa in the near future. So that's why, indeed, China wants to get Okinawa itself. So that is a big threat for
Yes.
Japan. So
Yes,
big
Dr.
division.
Nagao, unfortunately we are
Okay.
out of time. I apologise to have to cut you off again, but thank you ever so much, as always, for joining us and providing that insight.